But it gets worse. It's more callous than that. The Amber Alert website was shut down. Now, this is the thing. If there's a missing child, you get a message. Now, if you wanted to access the Amber Alert site, this is what it showed. Due to the lapse in federal funding, this Office of the Justice Program website is unavailable. Excuse me, hang on just a second. You're trying to get me to believe that you don't have enough money to keep the Amber Alert website going, really. But Michelle Obama's Let's Move website, that's working just fine. Really? Let me tell you something. Understand this clearly. The administration wants you to believe that salad bars at school are more important than finding abducted children, because you shut this one down before Amber Alert. And to prove the cut was completely politically motivated, after the severe backlash this administration, the administration this afternoon decided to put the Amber Alert website back online. Oh, I thought you didn't have any money. These guys are unbelievable. And why is this site still up? I mean, it doesn't work. No one is signing up. You should have heard Jack Lew yesterday on TV. I mean, he couldn't even say a number. Is it that it's so bad, or that you guys are so poorly run you don't know the number? I'm not here to talk about numbers. Nobody is signing up. This seems like a pretty painless cut. No, not this. This not only managed to survive, they sent in extra people to make it even better. But Amber Alert has to go down? Come on. By the way, Jon Stewart, you should be ashamed of yourself. I mean, this is comedy gold. They're trying to make a phony shutdown appear real and consequential because they have to get you to believe that cutting 13% is going to destroy your life. And here's how they're destroying lives. Grocery stores, the PX on Army bases, closed. But on the same Air Force base where they closed the PX, Andrews Air Force Base, the golf course remains open. The one the president likes. Explanation? Well, everybody pays for the green fees, and that's what keeps it going. Well, would that be the same for Mount Vernon? How about the farm in Virginia? How about the homes on Lake Mead? We could go on here. The Navy Air Force game was targeted, later saved by private funds, but Camp David remains open for the president. This one amazes me. The left comes out and says they are stopping life-saving cancer treatments for children. Life-saving cancer treatments for children. But when the GOP said, oh no, we'll fund that. Here, we just passed a bill. Here, it's funded. What happens? The Senate won't pass it, and the president says if they do pass it, I'll veto it. So he's withholding money from cancer-stricken children, and yet at the very same time, he decides he's going to grant $445 million in taxpayer funds to PBS. I mean, what happens to the hundreds of millions of dollars in Big Bird royalties? What happens to that? And how does PBS take precedence over cancer-stricken children? By the way, you know what the president did last week? The president was so upset by this, he set for a portrait for 3 days. Yeah, his very famous and very expensive portrait had to be done, so that's what he's doing, spending his time having his portrait made. Meanwhile, BigGovernment.com had some more bogus closings to add to the already insane list. Sports broadcasts overseas to the troops have been cut, but they're still getting the boring newscast, which is exactly what every soldier in harm's way wants. You know, forget the sports, they want the news. Acadie National Park closed. The shutting down of roads that require no ongoing maintenance, including one that goes through the Colorado National Park, closed. Police blocked the parking lot of a privately owned hotel in North Carolina. The St. Louis Arch closed. The D-Day Memorial closed. This one gets me. And see, you know what? You can close all the arches you want. I don't really give a flying crap. Here's what's really bad. They have told the military chaplains to stop counseling, stop doing mass religious services, and you can't baptize anybody. Now, the chaplains came back and said, now hang on just a second. we'll do that without pay. I mean, we got to have mass for people. We have to counsel them. We have to baptize their children. They were threatened with arrest if they did it. Now, I don't know about you, America, but you ask your friends. Being arrested for giving a mass or baptizing a baby on your own dime, on your own time, is that what the President of the United States does, or is that something more like Mussolini or Stalin? The President also tried to close down the state parks run in Wisconsin. So far, over 100 privately managed parks have been targeted. Private parks that run with no help from the federal government. You know, like his beloved Andrews Air Force golf course. Despite this, the overt, pointless targeting of American citizens, the President and his Democratic and his Republican allies are saying Ted Cruz and his ilk, they just want America to go into default.
I think this time's different. I think they should be concerned. I had a chance to speak to some in the financial industry who came down for their typical trip. And I told them that it is not unusual for Democrats and Republicans to disagree. That's the way the founders designed our government. Democracy's messy. But when you have a situation in which a faction is willing, potentially, to default on U.S. government obligations, then we are in trouble.
I want you to know that this president has a bully pulpit like no one else in the world. The President of the United States can say so much with just a few words. Just a look can change history. I cannot think of another time in American history, even during the Great Depression, when a president has used a threat to cause panic. I don't know of another president that tried to actually get the stock market to panic, where he has sown the seeds of panic. Do you hear what he said? That was an exclusive for CNBC. So he's talking directly to the financial market. Is there a reason to worry? The answer is no. Not with this president. I mean, in 2008, when everything was falling apart, I know how bad it was. I was telling you, this is bad. The president was saying, no, it's not. No, everything's under control. We damn near collapsed the entire world. The president doesn't say things like that. This one does. This one tells the stock market in an exclusive interview for the stock market, you should worry, you should panic. Oh my gosh. The Treasury Secretary Jack Lew echoed the fear-mongering on Fox.
Here's what your own Treasury Department report said. Credit markets could freeze. The value of the dollar could plummet. U.S. interest rates could skyrocket, and there might be a financial crisis and recession that could echo the events of 2008 or worse. On the other hand, the Fed continues to pump money into the economy. Given that, what's the likelihood that a default would be catastrophic?
Look, Chris, the good news is there's a majority in Congress that's ready to do the right thing, that's ready to vote to reopen the government,
question, not a political
and that's ready to avoid the kind of unthinkable problems that happen if the United States, for the first time since 1789, willfully defaults on the good full faith and credit of the United States. I don't think there are serious people who think that the consequence is minimal. The consequences are immediate and they're very bad. Congress needs to act.
Okay.
I asked you an economic question. Would it be catastrophic?
Chris, I am telling you that I know the direction. I know the direction
stop. I can't take it anymore. Listen, this rhetoric is not something to be taken lightly. Words of a president are always intentional. So now what would his intent be to talk down the stock market? This is not something he was just saying off. He was sitting in the White House doing an interview specifically for CNBC, the stock market. Well, why would you help the stock market tumble, interest rates balloon, the dollar be devalued? By the way, that's exactly what David Buckner told the audience last week. This is exactly what will happen, and it will kick off hyperinflation. You see, the president is not negotiating here. The president, they always self-diagnose when they say they don't care about the economy. He doesn't. He's going in for the kill. Since 1976, there have been 18 shutdowns. In each instant, there was a compromise on both sides in order to straighten things out. In 1976, Ford cited out-of-control spending for his reason to veto a funding bill. In 77, it was over federal dollars being used for abortions. In 1981, it was over spending cuts, specifically cuts on defense. Eventually, everybody agreed on a temporary bill to restore spending. In 1983, weapons funding was at the center again. Do you think that was the right? Again, there was a compromise. In 1990, Congress and George Bush came to an agreement. In 95 to 96, it was settled when Congress and Clinton agreed to pass a compromise budget. Ford, Carter, Reagan, Bush, Clinton, they all had to give up something, give a little. But the president is refusing to give the slightest inch and instead resorting to name-calling and threats against the market. Wow. But you know, the one thing that is unprecedented on this whole thing is the fact that we have a sitting president who is intentionally trying to spook the market. Now here's the next unprecedented event. It's not working. That's how little this man has credibility. He has none left. Nobody actually believes this president. And remember, Clinton compromised on passing a budget. So if I want to be fair, I would have to say this president hasn't passed a budget since he got into office. So how could we ever expect a compromise on one? When he had both houses, his budget's still lost. Usually 98-0. We're not the typical network. We don't strive to be the typical network. The typical network should take a look at themselves, and they should be less afraid of losing 15% of government services and a little more worried about why it is exactly the president and his people are intentionally trying to inflict pain on the average person, and why this president and his people are using the presidential bully pulpit to talk the market into collapse. And why is it his credibility is so damaged that nobody really seems to even give a damn what the president says anymore?